I never expected the will reading to change my life, but it did. I had prepared myself emotionally for years, suspecting favoritism, but still, nothing could have prepared me for the cold reality that slapped me across the face that day. The mahogany room was filled with extended family, my parents' lawyer, and the scent of old books and stale coffee. My sister, as always, sat perfectly postured in her designer outfit, with her husband by her side, smug and silent. I sat alone. When the lawyer opened the envelope and began reading, I held my breath not because I was greedy, but because I thought maybe, just maybe, my parents would show me that they saw me, that I mattered. But no. To our dearest daughter, the letter read, "We leave you $10 million, the lake house, and full ownership of the company." I froze. The words echoed in my ears, but none followed for me. Nothing. The lawyer cleared his throat, and to our son, he said, glancing briefly in my direction, "We leave you with our best wishes and encouragement to build your own legacy." I blinked. That was it. No money, no house. No apology for decades of indifference. My sister didn't even hide her satisfaction. She turned toward me with a smirk that sliced deeper than any insult. It was as though she had won a competition I never signed up for. I sat there in silence, while polite applause followed her inheritance announcement, and I, the invisible child, became more invisible still. The drive home from the lawyer's office was a blur. I barely noticed the cars or the roads, just the pounding realization that my own parents had treated me like an outsider even in death. My phone buzzed nonstop, relatives, sending sympathy or awkward messages like, "Hope you're okay," or "Maybe this is for the best, you're independent." Independent. I had worked 3 jobs through college because my parents said I needed to build character, while my sister got a new car for every birthday and lived in a penthouse by the time she was 25. I always thought they were just pushing me harder, that maybe there was a method behind their madness. But now it was clear they had simply never intended to include me. They never valued me, and worst of all, they never even tried to understand me. I looked back at every childhood memory, every birthday where my gift was an afterthought, every time I was told, "Be more like your sister." My chest tightened. Anger simmered under the surface. But it wasn't just anger, it was betrayal. The kind that doesn't scream, it seeps into your bones. I reached home, a modest apartment I could barely afford, and sat in the dark. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just sat there, letting the silence remind me of everything I'd just lost, everything I never had to begin with. In the following weeks, I became obsessed with proving them wrong, not just my parents, but everyone who thought I wasn't enough. I worked overtime, poured every ounce of energy into my tech startup idea I'd been sketching for years. No one believed in it, but I didn't care. I maxed out my credit cards, borrowed from friends, and taught myself coding late at night with tired eyes and takeout boxes scattered around my tiny living room. I built the prototype alone. When it crashed, I rebuilt it. When people laughed at me during my pitch, I revised and My sister called once, smug as ever, offering me a job at the company she now owned. "It's the least I can do," she said sweetly, dripping with condescension. I told her no, not because I didn't need the money, but because I wasn't going to let the same people who ignored me become the people who owned me. Rejection fueled me. I stayed up nights, tweaking the code, redesigning the UI, working out bugs. And then, one day, it worked. My app solved a real problem people faced every day. I launched it with barely enough money for server space and some local ads. But within a week, downloads skyrocketed. People talked about it online. Reviews flooded. Investors called, and for the first time, I saw a future that wasn't built from scraps tossed my way but from the ground up. By me. A year passed, and everything changed. My company exploded in popularity. Venture capitalists poured in, with offers. I went from being broke and forgotten to being one of the most talked about names in the startup world. Suddenly, reporters wanted interviews. Industry giants wanted partnerships. My sister sent another message this time, congratulating me. It was brief and hollow, but I could read between the lines. Envy. The same smirk she wore at the will reading was gone now, replaced with silence. I bought my first home, not a penthouse or a mansion, but a sleek modern house with space, light, and peace. I furnished it myself. I framed pictures from my journey, not of family, but of late nights, of code on screens, of my first office, of the newspaper article that called me the outsider genius. I didn't attend family functions anymore. I stopped answering shallow messages. My focus was clear: build my own empire, and do it with integrity. And then one day, I got the call that shifted everything again. My parents' company, the one my sister inherited, was failing. Their board was panicking. They wanted help, my help. The irony wasn't lost on me. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I agreed to a meeting, not to save them, but to show them who I had become without them. Walking into that boardroom was like stepping into a scene I'd only imagined in my fantasies. My sister sat at the head, no longer confident, her eyes sunken with stress. The board members looked tired, desperate. I wore a simple suit, not flashy but commanding. They explained the company's issues: outdated systems, poor innovation, bad public image. Then they asked for my solution. I listened quietly, my eyes meeting my sister's only once. She didn't smirk this time. She looked ashamed. I cleared my throat and laid out my terms. I'll take over as CEO, I said. I'll rebuild from scratch, but I want full control. No interference. Silence fell. She resisted at first, but the board overruled her. The next day, I was officially CEO of the company I was once denied. I didn't do it for revenge, I did it for the challenge. For the opportunity to prove once and for all that I didn't need a head start to lead. I restructured departments, introduced new technology, and revamped the brand. The company's image began to recover, slowly but surely. Employees respected me not for my name, but for what I delivered. My sister stepped back quietly, her role now ceremonial. My name, once ignored in my own family, was now on the building that stood tall in the city skyline. Despite my success, I remained private. I didn't attend galas or accept awards publicly. I kept my focus on impact, on mentoring others like me who had been overlooked and dismissed. My story became inspiration for countless young people told they were less than. I funded scholarships, opened tech labs in underserved schools, and built a startup incubator for low-income entrepreneurs. I didn't want prize, I wanted results. Every time someone asked why I worked so hard, I thought back to that will reading, to that smirk. It had been the fuel I never knew I needed. My parents never reached out. My sister remained a distant figure, watching from the sidelines as I transformed everything they once denied me into something greater than they could have imagined. I didn't need their apology anymore. Their silence was confirmation enough. I was no longer the forgotten child, I was a force, and I had built it all from the ground up. Every boardroom I walked into, every handshake, every signed deal was a reminder that my worth was never tied to what I inherited but what I created. Years later, my parents' house was up for sale. I saw the listing online: faded furniture, outdated decor, a house that once felt like a palace, now looked like a relic. I bought it, not to live in it, but to turn it into something new. I converted it into a community center, a space for dreamers, for outcasts, for those who needed a place to be seen. I kept one room intact, my old bedroom, untouched. I framed a copy of that will and placed it on the wall, not as bitterness, but as a monument to what ignited my journey. Visitors would ask why that document hung there, and I'd smile and say, because sometimes, being left out is the best thing that can happen to you. My name spread across industries, not because I inherited wealth, but because I turned rejection into resilience. The world didn't know about that smirk, that moment of dismissal, but I did, and that was enough. I built something unbreakable not because I had to, but because I wanted to show that no one defines your worth but you. Now, when I stand on the balcony of my office 50 stories above the city that once swallowed me, I don't think about what I lost. I think about what I became. I no longer seek approval from those who overlooked me. I no longer need to prove myself. I found peace in knowing I did what they said I couldn't. The little boy who once sat quietly in the back seat of every family photo now runs empires. I get letters from kids who say, "Your story made me believe in myself." That means more than any inheritance ever could. My sister, she lives comfortably, still managing family affairs. We're civil, distant, but every now and then, she looks at me with something new, not envy, not guilt, but respect. And perhaps that's the greatest inheritance of all, not the money. Not the legacy, but the quiet, undeniable truth that I made it, not because of them, but despite them. And sometimes, the greatest gift life can give you is being underestimated, because it gives you the chance to become unstoppable.